Yo, what is up guys, it's Pedro here, and in today's video I want to talk about an undrafted free agent that the Washington Commanders found that might be a diamond in the rough and has a chance to make the Washington Commanders 53-man roster and be a contributor down the line. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell as well. We're less than 200 subscribers away from 16,000 subscribers. It's free, takes 1 second. Just do it. You guys won't be disappointed, and trying to hit that before the start of the season, which is 2 weeks away from today. So let's get right into it. So Kaho, who was an undrafted free agent out of UCLA, also played at Alabama, was also a 5-star recruit coming out of college. He's very, very highly touted coming out of high school. Sorry if I said college. And had a little bit of a disappointing stint in college, but still is able to get signed as an undrafted free agent. And he played with Cam at UCLA, also, with Ken Norton, who was there. I believe they overlapped a little bit. But Kaho has really impressed this offseason, especially in the preseason. Last couple weeks, especially, he has been this standout, has had, yesterday had an outstanding game. We're going to get into that in a second, but, a 90.8 PFF grade. And of course, you got to take, PFF with a grain of salt. But it is still very, very encouraging that he had that 90.8 PFF grade. Also, side note, Duke Riley has been doing pretty well. I don't think he's going to make the 53-man roster, but I could see him making the practice squad and at some point during the season getting called up. I also think it's going to be hard for Kaho to make the 53-man roster, but maybe they can kind of move some players around and make it work. Maybe Sam Cosmi starts on IR, maybe someone else starts on IR, and they're able to keep him around. So that is just something to consider for the Washington Commanders. And Kaho, let's get right into it. So Jeremy Reeves today, he quote tweeted Grant Paulson, who had a highlight. I'm not going to play because of copyright issues, but it was a TFL, and he says one of them ones. So Jeremy Reeves has high praise for him, and other players have had as well. Dan Quinn had some high praise for him, and he has continued to ball out and put together a really good off season. You see his pro day results. He's not super athletic, had a bunch of injuries in college. 6'1.5", 231 pounds. The 40-yard dash is good, 4.5, but you have to take it with a grain of salt because it was his pro day. And then the bench press reps 14. I feel like that's a little below average for linebacker, right around, I think that's a little below average. The vertical leap's not too good. So he's not super athletic, but yesterday in that game, you saw what he, brought to the table and what he was able to do. And we can look up Kaho's stats at UCLA just to, give you guys a little bit more information. But, he had a really good game yesterday and was, every time there was a, tackle made, you basically saw, Kaho somewhere around there. So he played for Alabama for 3 years, won a natty there, but just didn't do a lot. Played 15, 13, 11 games. So he did play, a decent amount, but just wasn't a huge contributor. 14 total tackles. 14 total tackles in 3 years. So wasn't getting, those were solo tackles. The combined tackles you see there, what is that? 33 total tackles in 3 years, 1 tackle for a loss. And then, he won a natty in 2020, then went to UCLA, had a little bit of a better season, 32 tackles, and then missed the whole 2022 season. Also missed the basically missed the 2023 season. I mean, he played 1 game. Not sure what the injury was there, but definitely seems like it was, significant. And then this past year had, in 8 games, 26 tackles, which, is almost his career high. And, he did it in fewer games than 11. So still, the numbers aren't very impressive. But what matters is what he's doing for the Commanders currently. And, that is a lot of tackles. He's sniffing out these runs, these, short passes, and just getting to the football and making plays. I mean, yesterday, 7 tackles, 6 of them were solo tackles, also had an assist. In his preseason, he has 15 tackles and 8 solos, 7 assists. So I'm sure for the linebackers, that's leading the Commanders. That's leading the Commanders in total tackles for sure. And Kamadrano might be up there as well. I'm not sure because he's been getting a lot of PT, but I think Ale Kaho has been a little bit more impressive. But they're different, they're different players. Kamadrano's not going to show up as much because he's more of a pass coverage guy. So, if you're not hearing his name, honestly, that's a good thing because he's doing really good, doing really well in these coverage situations. And, obviously he's going to be involved in run fits and everything like that. But Ale Kaho is more of a, run defender versus a cover guy. That's his strength, is run defense and sniffing out these run plays like he did in the Ravens game. But he did have some, good plays where he was right in position for coverage and, barely allowed a gain, like allowed a 1-2 yard gain. There was some times where, the other defender would kind of get beat, but he would be right there. Like there was one play, I can't remember what Ravens player it was, but they had some nice spin move and one of the guys fell, and then Ale Kaho was right there to make the play and just clean up duty. So that's what you got to do as a linebacker sometimes, and he's been doing it. So I was trying to do a 53-man roster projection today. It's very hard to keep him on the roster. It really is, because at the linebacker position, you got Bobby Wagner, you got Frankie Luvu. Those are your two starters. After that, you have Kamadrano and Jordan McGee. Those guys are locks to make it. And then you got Nick Bellore as the special teams only player. So that's 5 right there. It's hard to keep 6 linebackers. And then, maybe they'll, Von Miller's going to make it. I know on some roster projections they're putting him as a linebacker because he's an outside, he's an outside guy. But, obviously he's going to be DN for us. But that's 5 linebackers. I would say the most likely scenario is you release Ale Kaho and Duke Riley, keep them on the practice squad, and then throughout the season call them up for certain games, see how they're developing. Hopefully no injuries happen. But if there are some injuries, then obviously you can bring those guys in. I really like what Duke Riley's done so far in the preseason, and he is an NFL vet. He's played a while in the league and has a lot of experience. And Ale Kaho is different. Obviously, he's younger, and you're trying to develop him a little bit more and see what he can do down the line. But maybe a team picks him up though. That's the thing. Yeah, he was an undrafted free agent, so teams had a bunch of opportunities to draft him. 7 different times each team basically. And sign him as an undrafted free agent. I don't know how many teams were interested in him as an undrafted free agent. It made sense for the Commanders because already got Kamadrano on the team, his teammate, and then Ken Norton was his linebackers coach at UCLA for a little bit, I believe. So that also makes sense. But that's also why he signed here. So he might have had a bunch of different options. But him putting together this really good preseason tape does make it harder for the Commanders to release him and not, him not getting claimed. I'm not saying he will get claimed, but there is a chance just because he is a younger guy, rookie player, and, he put together some really good preseason tape. So that's something the Commanders are going to have to juggle with a little bit is, all right, can we release him without him getting picked up? So if they don't think they can, maybe they keep him on the roster and then move some things around, Sam Cosmi on IR, that'll, give you another roster spot, and they get 2 of those. So if they use 2 of those, they can put those guys on short-term IR after 4, before the season starts, and they'll miss 4 games. But after 2 guys, if you put more than 2 guys on before the start of the season, then those guys, the other guys will be out for the whole year. But, they can put Sam Cosmi on IR, maybe someone else, and that gives you a couple roster spots, and maybe you're able to keep Ale Kaho here. He is doing a post-game interview. Shout out to David Harris, and you guys can check that out on Twitter. But I think, there's a chance he makes it. I still would bet he doesn't make the roster. That's my projection, is he's not on the roster, but he definitely significantly improved his chances of making the team after his performance on Saturday against the Ravens, and I just like the potential that he showed as, a good run defender and someone that, has learned a lot this offseason. And, we really didn't hear about him too much in practice, a little bit, but not too much. But in the games, we're starting to hear him, and he might be a player that's just better in the games than he is in practice. There are those types of players that are more gamers than practice players. And yeah, I'm just interested to see how how this all plays out. Do they keep him on the practice squad? Do they really, if they don't and they keep him on the active roster, that shows how much they really like him, and maybe they think he's a rising star that can potentially develop into a good backup linebacker in the next year or two, and then maybe from there into a starter. Linebacker is a position where you can find guys in the late rounds as an undrafted free agent. And guys, honestly, the linebackers can play well right away. It's a position that you obviously can have some development. You could use some development, but it's a position where a lot of guys can come in and ball out right away. So, maybe the Commanders did find themselves a diamond in the rough. But that's it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys new, and peace.